Hello and welcome back to the Musical Instrument Investigator. Today we are on the website of Gardiner Houlgate Auctioneers based in the UK, and we're having a look at their third auction that they're having in a row, and this is the general musical instrument auction. So if you've had a look at the other two videos, on the 8th and the 9th of December there was the guitar kind of auction, or guitar and then amp and kind of pedal auction, and now on the 10th of December we have the musical instrument auction, the general kind of sale. The 10th is tomorrow, so it's the 9th today, so you've got kind of one day to have a look at all of this stuff. 429 lots in the auction. Buyer's premium is 26.4%. This is a UK based auction, so if you're in Europe or international, etc., then watch out for kind of fees and things like that, so read up all of the terms, etc. So without further ado, let's just kind of have a brief overview of this and maybe dive into a few specific items. So we have a 5-string Zither banjo circa 1900, 19th century 6-string fretless banjo, an interesting German 17-string theorbo, 2 1-string Strovals, a 3-row button accordion, 2 mid-19th century flutina accordions, an 8 English 7-string fretless banjo, good late 19th century 6-string banjo, large concert zither, Spanish bandurria, an interesting open back fretless banjo, no lot on that one, a Meslel rosewood pyramid metronome, a good French Serablo concert model mandolin, a B&S master 4-string banjo, a fine and possibly unique 7-string banjo. Looks like it's with finely engraved silver plated fretboard. There you go. That's an interesting one. I think this was in a previous auction, but didn't sell. 600 to 800 is the estimate. It's a poster, we can ignore that. Small square piano, German or Austrian. I think that might have been in the last auction. 5-string banjo by and stamped J.E. Dallas. 20th century Neapolitan style mandolin, another 20th century Neapolitan style mandolin, good Milan school mandolin, an old Neapolitan mandolin, an interesting 12-string mandolin, labelled Jose Gomez and Michi Calle Corontes. Does look slightly interesting. Rare bell tree consisting of 16 graduated bells. Yep, that is fairly interesting. I don't see that too often. Brass and iron xylophone, rare white and metal gilded hand jiggling Johnny, isn't it what they call? Jingling Johnny, sorry. Jiggling. Yep. Old drum majors. Mace there, rare French monochord. That's interesting. Gardiner Houlgate do know how to pull out some random instruments. Unusual 6-string banjo, Jedson ukulele banjo, Lacknell & Co. English concertina, good English Lacknell & Co. concertina, fine Anglo concertina, by and labelled Colin Dipper. So as we know, these concertinas go for quite a lot, 2,000 to 3,000 is the estimate. Good contemporary English lute, by and labelled Charles Ford, 1974. Quite a nice back on that. Small English contemporary lute by John Goret. Always interesting to see. Another English lute by John Goret, 1993. Some timpanis there, more Premier timpanis. Another timpani, 1960s Rogers 3-piece drum kit, contemporary drum snare drum by Kraft, Pearl Forum Series 5 drum kit, 1950s Radio King Slingerland bass drum, various kind of drums and skins, Zildjian cymbals, that and Solar by Sabian 20-inch ride cymbal, and also another Sabian medium ride, a whole load of cymbals there, more cymbals, Premier portable metal glockenspiel, and 2 wooden xylophones, 2 old tabla drums, and some other bits. Ooh, silver top walking stick, that's an interesting lot. Oh, formerly belonging to Yehudi Menuhin, so there you go, they'll probably be quite popular. Another lot withdrawn. There's a banjolele there and a short scale tenor banjo. Here is an English guitar, Citan in fact. Good late 18th century, early 19th century English Citan. 19th century lute there. G, H and S melody uke. Pilgrim 5-string banjo, George Formby ukulele banjo, and some kind of mandolin. So, not too bad. Here is a 120 button accordion and another instrument. Contemporary Renaissance lute there by Maish Weissman. It's actually fairly interesting. Load of mouth organs, Crafter electric mandola, Grafton contemporary 5-string banjo, another contemporary 5-string banjo, Premier vibraphone there, in need of restoration. Old Neapolitan mandolin, labelled Giovanni De Miglio. Galotta piano accordion, square piano by Christoph Gaynor. Premier 4-piece drum kit, Neapolitan mandolin, banjo and some other things. Savannah banjo with another ukulele banjo there. Good and unusual mandola there, labelled Anolo Nicolosi. Interesting. Rare and unusual cylinderback mandolin by and labelled Vega. A good contemporary filed touchstone mandolin. Suzuki Japanese harp. Interesting. 2 of those. Is a cocos wood oboe with German silver keywork. Interesting. Another cocos wood Boehm system oboe. Cocos wood oboe with German silver. Another cocos wood oboe silver plated. Here is a silver plated conservatoire system oboe. African blackwood sharp system oboe with German silver keywork. African blackwood conservatoire system oboe. Cocos wood clarinet with German silver keywork. Another B-flat clarinet there, African blackwood B-flat clarinet, and ebonite B-flat clarinet. Cocos wood E-flat clarinet, German silver, B-flat Mazio system clarinet, African blackwood Popesci system flute. Cocos wood flute with silver keywork, African blackwood flute with 11 keys, silver flute with silver keywork, boxwood flute with horn mounts, ebonite Pratton perfected system flute, new metal 1867 flute there, ebonite Boehm system flute, cocos wood conical Boehm system flute, silver plated Boehm system flute, an aluminium Boehm system flute, another aluminium Boehm system, looks like a piccolo, yeah, and silver plated Moyse model Boehm system, flute there, Cocos wood flute, another Bohm system flute, brass cylinder bore flute, boxwood flute with horn mounts, African blackwood Bohm system flute, another African blackwood Bohm system piccolo, Cocos wood Bohm system piccolo, ebonite model piccolo, silver plated conical bore double walled piccolo there, and ivory piccolo with 6 keys. Interesting, going into the made in Germany, circa 1880. African blackwood piccolo with ivory head, boxwood piccolo with horn bands, African blackwood Bohm system piccolo, Cocos wood piccolo, African blackwood Bohm system piccolo. There's a lot of piccolo. Cocos wood piccolo again, 3 Bohm system piccolos by Ruddle, 6 piccolos, no maker's name, so a lot of wind instruments there, and still going. 3 piccolos by Buffet Crampon, box of flute pieces, 4 pitch pipes, English 19th century. That's interesting. I definitely need to brush up on my wind instruments because I really do not know all that much about them. Some flute mouthpieces there, no lot on this. Is a Gibbon Hart silver plated flute, and a bass trombone, Hawks, Helicon, and a tenor trombone by Besson. Tenor trombone stamps the Salvationist Publishing and Supplies. Soprano trombone there, baritone horn, bass valve trombone, silver plated cornet, silver plated trumpet, another brass flugelhorn, silver plated tenor horn, brass tenor horn, mid 20th century bass trombone with slide, Yamaha metal flute, together with some other bits, and another metal flute and a Moek recorder, French bass clarinet, a lot of different mouthpieces, tenor saxophone mouthpieces. There's a kind of mute for a euphonium, I think there. There's some mouthpieces and other bit, lyres as well. Jupiter soprano bass trombone, Boozy and Hawkes Emperor clarinet, another couple of Boozy and Hawkes clarinets there, good French oboe, fine silver flute, old Boozy and Co Imperial model tuba, and Buffet Crampon tenor saxophone there, Selmer branded alto saxophone there, another alto saxophone. Here's another Selmer alto saxophone, various random bits of clarinets and flutes, always interesting. Boxwood and ivory flute, another boxwood and ivory clarinet there, good contemporary Yamaha trombone there. This is unusual acrylic and brass sousaphone. Yeah, that's a curious looking one, isn't it? Here's an old silver plated tuba, soprano saxophone. Here's this flugelhorn there, silver plated, wooden case for a violin. Now we're into more comfortable territory here. Bavarian violin with carved lion's head. Okay. A treble viol there. 7/8 violin there of the Calston school. Whole load of clamps and planes, etc. Mid 20th century Stradivari copy in need of restoration, pretty standard there. Let's carry on this way. 3/4 violin from 1890. Violin circa 1930s. It's pretty normal. Early 20th century Stradivari copy viola. Hawks and Son Professor labelled violin. Alfred Moritz Excelsior violin. French violin circa 1930. Small contemporary Romanian viola. Early 20th century violin. And another kind of German violin. Interesting old violin in need of extensive restoration. So yeah, it's a kind of speculative thing for someone there. I'm sure there'll be bids on it. Looks kind of interesting. 20th century child's violin. Early 20th century violin in need of restoration. Interesting geometric violin. That is pretty bizarre. Another Strad copy violin. 20th century violin. French 3/4 violin. 19th century German violin. Another 19th century violin. Hills and Son case. Contemporary German violin labelled Konrad Paulus. 20th century violin again. German 3/4 violin. Whole load of different kind of violins and bows and cases. An English violin there by Louis Fussell, Bedford, and a couple of other full-size violins. English viola labelled Louis Fussell, Bedford, and another viola by the same maker. So there you go. Some English instruments there. Here's another English viola by and labelled Louis Fussell. So it's obviously was cranking a few instruments out. A load of different bow parts and pegs and stuff like that. German 3/4 size violin. A couple of cases. Whole load of fittings. Load of strings. It's a German violin. French violin. 19th century German violin. 19th century Maggini style violin. Whole load of different parts and clamps for violins. Some various violins. Some more kind of generic violins. Whole load of different violins needing some restoration. 20th century viola and two interesting other bits, more speculative stuff. 19th century German violin. Early 20th century violin. 20th century 3/4 violin, and another violin there. A German double purple 3/4 violin, and another violin. There's a whole load of lots combined here. Two German 3/4 violins. German 3/4 violin and some other 3/4 violins. English 3/4 violin, labelled David R. Uvi. 3 old full-size violins in need of attention. 20th century German violin. 19th century violin. German violin circa 1900. Early 20th century German violin. 3 full-size and a 3/4 violin. Good Edwardian burr walnut mahogany fitted double case. This is actually quite nice. Quite a nice case there. Interesting 19th century French violin, and another 19th century violin. A lot of multi-lots in this auction. Late 19th century child's half-size violin. 20th century German full-size violin, and a few other things. Late 19th century Mittenwald violin. Late 19th century German violin. German violin there. French violin. 20th century German violin, and a whole load of others. Interesting English primitive violin labelled Arthur Ernest, is it? And also a viola. Interesting. Good late 19th century violin in need of restoration. Late 19th century French 8th size child violin. Contemporary English violin labelled Brian Philip Brealey, Nottingham. Contemporary English violin, another Philip Brealey. Early 20th century German violin, and an Andreas Zeller violin there. Box of unfinished violas and violins by Brian Philip Brealey. Whole load of parts and bits like that. Old English viola in need of restoration, and some other bits. A good gauge oblong violin case. Antique and fruitwood violin peg drill. That's quite cool. That will probably go to an interested collector. This item was submitted as a mystery object to Dick Joyce on the popular television series hosted by Anglia Broadcasting called Bygones. A view of the programme subsequently correctly identified the object, and the accompanying paperwork refers. Interesting. Violin indistinctly labelled Carl something. Early 20th century violin labelled Carlo Bergonzi. Good ebonized double oblong violin case, and another Hills case. Whole load of violin fittings. Books on French luthiers and the Cooper collection. Mr. Black's violin. Golden Age of violin making in Spain. Books on Stradivari. More Stradivari books. Books on Hills and Sons. More Hills and Sons. This is Scarabotto. Universal Dictionary. Some etchings of musicians. Whole load of bow cases there. Whole load of bows. Whole load of bows. More bows. More bows. And some more bows. Why not some more bows? Let's have some more bows. And it goes on, just lots of different bows. Some of these probably look kind of quite interesting, all speculative. But yeah, whole load of bows in this auction. It's actually quite busy on items, this auction, I have to say. A lot of bundles of things, a lot more than usual. So that is definitely interesting. And some more bows. At some point we'll probably get to, yep, here we go, German nickel mounted violin bow. So we're getting into the better ones now. Another nickel mounted violin bow stamped Dodd. So anything vaguely interesting they'll pull out of the pile, I would have thought. Silver mounted violin bow. Another silver mounted violin bow stamped Dodd. Silver mounted violin bow stamped MT Snewing. English silver mounted violin bow by and stamped DJ Newton, or DI Newton in fact. Silver mounted violin bow unstamped. English silver mounted violin bow by and stamped Jazz Tubbs, 5 to 800 the estimate, that's a bit better. German nickel mounted violin bow stamped Taut. German silver mounted violin bow, Weichold School. Austrian violin bow by and stamped H. Voigt in Vienne. That's interesting. Interesting silver mounted violin bow stamped W. Vauss. Curious. Silver mounted violin bow stamped A. Lamy at Paris. Good German silver mounted violin bow stamped Hawks. Silver mounted violin bow stamped Nicholas Newman. Some interesting bows in this auction. Good English silver mounted violin bow stamped Dodd. Interesting silver mounted violin bow with round stick. German silver mounted violin bow unstamped. German silver mounted violin bow unstamped. Interesting silver mounted violin bow stamped Dodd. Nickel mounted violin bow stamped Bayer. Nickel mounted violin bow stamped Yuri. German silver mounted violin bow stamped Joachim. French nickel mounted violin bow stamped Bazin. English silver mounted violin bow stamped Dodd. Silver and nickel mounted violin bow. Rare American or English patent metal violin bow. Okay, interesting one. Nickel mounted violin bow. German silver mounted violin bow. By and stamped Otto Derschmidt. Contemporary English silver mounted viola bow. Stamped J.D. Woodfield. Silver mounted cello bow. Unstamped. French silver mounted violin bow stamped A. Husson, Paris. French nickel mounted violin bow stamped Buthold. French violin bow stamped Louis Bazin. English silver mounted violin bow by and stamped M.M. Taylor. English silver mounted viola bow by and stamped L. Cocker. German nickel mounted violin bow stamped Matthias Thoma. Nickel mounted violin bow stamped Paul Maginot. Silver mounted violin bow unstamped. English silver mounted violin bow by and stamped Roy Collins. Okay. Silver mounted cello bow unstamped. English silver mounted violin bow by and stamped W.E. Hill. Silver mounted violin bow with a repaired head. Nickel mounted violin bow stamped Chanot. Silver mounted violin bow stamped Dodd. Interesting German violin bow of the Knopf school. That is quite a curious one. French silver mounted violin bow probably by JTL. Yeah, that looks interesting. German silver mounted violin bow by and stamped Jules Heiner Zimmermann. English silver mounted viola bow by and stamped W.E. Hills. Good English silver mounted viola bow by and stamped John Clutterbuck. Good English silver mounted violin bow stamped W.E. Hills and Sons. Good German violin circa 1910, possibly of the Berlin school. 20th century German violin there. Unlabelled. Good violin, probably by Carlo Storioni circa 1900. Okay. German violin by and labelled A. Becker. It's got some documents with it. 20th century German viola there. French violin labelled Lutherie Artistique. Good French violin by and labelled Jean-Baptiste Allot. 20th century Stradivari copy. German viola circa 1910. Interesting late 18th, early 19th century viola Mittenwald violin, circa 1880. Interesting 18th century violin labelled Cahusac. 20th century German viola. Scottish violin by and labelled George Webster, maker Aberdeen. Late 19th century Stradivari, copy violin. Early 20th century 7/8 violin. German violin labelled A.K. Huttel. Violin labelled Michelangelo Puglisi. German violin labelled Louis Ott, Dusseldorf. Russian violin labelled Jules Heinrich Zimmermann, Wasaku. Interesting. 3/4 French violin there. Early 19th century violin, and another violin there. Scottish violin labelled made by James Hardy. Interesting old violin labelled Joan Udalricus Ebel. 4 to 800 is the estimate on that. Good English violin by and stamped J. Priestnell. French violin labelled Nicolas Bertolini. French violin labelled copy of Viome. French violin labelled Nicolas Bertolini. French violin labelled Antonia Adequina. Interesting 19th century violin, probably North Italian. Rare early 20th century Violon d'Amore. Interesting early 19th century violin with a Guarneri label. German violin circa 1900. Early 20th century violin in need of some restoration. 19th century French violin labelled Breton Brevet. Early viola, probably Dutch, circa 1820, unlabelled. This was in the last sale for sure. Modern Czech violin by and labelled Karol Vavra. German 3/4 size violin of the Neuner and Hornsteiner school. Good Scottish violin labelled Thomas Craig, Aberdeen. Interesting violin labelled Geoffredus Kappa. Fine and interesting French violin labelled Pierre Pacarel. 20th century Dresden violin. Early 20th century German viola. German violin labelled Französische Violin. Interesting early violin of the Pamphylian school, unlabelled. This is one of the more interesting violins, I think, in the lot. Definitely an interesting front to that. Contemporary English viola by and ink to the back, Brian Philip Brearley. So another instrument there. Another one by Philip Brearley, English violin. Looks like in Baroque setup. Interesting early 19th century violin labelled Johann Christian Voigt. Old violin stamped Remy to the inner back. Ooh. French violin by and labelled Leon Mougenot Gauche. English violin by and labelled by Lewis F. Milton. Interesting old viola, unlabelled. Curious, 5 to 8,000. That seems quite high an estimate. Very interesting late 18th century violin, attributed to Landolfi School, Milan, circa 1790. German violin by and labelled C.G. Schuster, Martin Kirchen. Interesting old violin of the Pamphylian School, another Pamphylian one, but quite different to the other one. This one looks more like what I think of Pamphylian. Restored and in need of further restoration, 3 to 500. That's an interesting one. 19th century English violin, labelled Nicholas Armatus. Interesting 19th century violin in need of considerable restoration. Interesting early 19th century Bohemian violin. 2 cello necks and scrolls, and a double bass neck. Early 20th century cello in need of restoration. Contemporary half-size cello and a quarter-size cello. Some contemporary Romanian cellos there. 20th century French cello and another cello needing a lot of restoration. Cello circa 1900. Old primitive cello there, apparently. Looks kind of cool. Quite like it. It's interesting. 60 to 100. English cello by Louis Fussell. Unlabelled, another one, but probably by the same maker. Early 20th century French cello. 18th century English cello of the Ferber School. This is quite cool. 12 to 1800 is the estimate. German 7/8 cello. Interesting 19th century unpurfled cello. Another curious one. Unlabelled. Some interesting cellos. Interesting old cello labelled John Simpson. Musical instrument maker. Yeah, interesting. From the Royal Exchange. Cello in poor condition. Looks very interesting though. Some really cool looking cellos. Mid 19th century English cello, unlabelled. Good late 19th century cello. Cello of the Neuner and Hornsteiner School. Good contemporary cello labelled Luther d'Art. Interesting late 18th, early 19th century cello, unlabelled. That is pretty cool looking actually. That back is interesting. Interesting varnish and repairs and things. 1,000 to 1,500 estimate. Good contemporary English cello by William Piper. English 18th century cello, labelled, made by Thomas Smith. Interesting. Interesting early 19th century cello. Another curious one. Small early mid 18th century cello. There's some really great cellos in here. Electric double bass there. Contemporary 3/4 double bass. No, the Tyrolean double bass. 19th century double bass. Interesting 19th century German double bass. Louis Lowendahl double bass. Stamped Dresden. German flatback double bass. 19th century Dresden double bass. Late 19th century Dresden double bass. Good English double bass by W.R. Jones of Barnstable, Devon. Ooh, nice line head on that. That's quite cool. 1923. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Fine and interesting late 18th century double bass. Another lion head. attributed to Luigi Alosio Marcuccini, carved lion's head, 10 to 12,000 there. It's a curious one. 5-string. Oh, we've gone right back to the beginning, I think. It's looped round. Yep, I think we are there. So that's it. We've gone through the entire auction. I have to say, really interesting. Some really curious cellos, and a few of those Pamphylian school violins are really definitely quite interesting. So definitely worth checking it out. So yeah, have a look at it in more detail than I have, and check over some of the pictures. I'll put a link in the description. Definitely worth having a look at this auction. The Gardiner Houlgate musical instrument one is always quite curious. So yeah, check it out. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. Many thanks for tuning in to the Musical Instrument Investigator. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please like, subscribe and turn on notifications, and watch out for the next video coming soon.